episode 1. This is my first attempt at a direct daily method of educating and teaching. And what I will do here is I will start with a rebuttal to Lloyd Evans for my first episode by answering one of the many questions that you people have out there. I start by giving a fair use notice that any clipping that I display is strictly for rebuttal, to criticize, to help other people realize other ways to understand things. And that includes helping people to understand Lloyd, because although he rips apart a lot of the things of the Watchtower, he is not without being able to be ripped apart himself, which he understands that. But the truth is he doesn't allow it. Okay, he does a lot of blocking. Okay, I've been blocked. I have had 4 different names. I'm always getting new names in order to be anonymous. I never wanted to be out there in the public, criticized. I have plenty of my own sins. And the problem is that then you get accused of trying to hide your criminality or whatever. You know, I offended a girl who was very vicious and attacking on people. And first thing she does is then turn around and find fault with me. You know, you find fault with someone, they think of serving the same measure back to you, like Jesus said. So right here, I'm going to start with what Lloyd Evans said.
In order to lose the despair and find joy and happiness, their advice hinges instead on how can you serve the organization more? How can you busy yourself more in Jehovah's service? That's what the organization is all about. It's not about inner bliss. It's not about personal contentment or happiness or joy. It's about serving Jehovah, which means serving the organization. And I couldn't help but recoil at the opening words where the narrator says, we all face problems that are hard to deal with. So can you ever really be happy? And I was thinking, well, what's the Jehovah's Witness solution for problems that are hard to deal with?
As a viewer of YouTube videos, which means that it would take a lot of searching trying to find specific words of what John said. But basically he was saying that if you could have a discussion with him and show him the evidence and the proof, that he'd be willing to convert. Well, I always thought that he certainly hasn't seen the evidence I have, but I have also now gone through a few evolution and agnostic videos of his to see at what depth he's sold at it. I'm not sure he would listen very long to me. So basically my video is to present to you people, not him anyways. I've left messages on his voicemail, the internet voicemail. And what I'll do, I'll deal directly with the questions. And here we go. Okay, one of the many questions people have, it pertains to evolution. How far does history go back? They really don't have a definite line of demarcation where they say, okay, here's where the Neanderthal and the monkeys and apes were, and here's where people started making small little villages or towns. They don't have any of that mapped out for claiming their evolution. Yet the Bible is very clear with a lot of the cities that we find, and that's what Britain and France and Spain, the countries that went out to dig up these cities in Egypt, Iraq, and Iran, and to unveil what was actually so or not so. So here we have a map, and some of these cities are before the flood and some are after. So does that mean the flood is local? We have the dates. Here in blue are the cities that were built before the flood, the ones that are on the map. This map shows only 3 of them. It shows Eridu, which was 3340 BC, Larsa, which is 3040 BC before the flood, and Lyric, 2740 BC. It is after the flood that people talk about Babel or Babylon. And it's not the first city. As you can see, Kish was built in 2270 BC. This is because 100 years after the flood, Cush, the grandson of Noah, fathered Nimrod. And Nimrod was born in 2270 BC, and he lived for 500 years. So, since his death is in 1770 BC, April 22nd to be exact, that will be taken up in another video. You count back 500 years and it's 2270. I was not always willing to accept this because Eber was born before that and he only lived 464 years. So for Nimrod to live 500 years, it's pretty much like, why is that happening? Why is someone being born after Eber who's only 464 and they're living to 500? That will be presented in a future video. The point is that Babel was thus built in year 130 according to tradition, and this 130 or 2240 BC would be when Nimrod was 30 years old. That's also a tradition that he went forth when he was 30. Okay? But it would take many years before I found out that they really didn't build a city around the tower until the city of fell. So what we have is, with my pointer here, we have these pre-flood cities, 3340 BC, 3040 BC, 2740 BC. And after the flood, we're going to deal with the first dynasty of Kish, because it's Kish that began to have rulers. Or they consider Nimrod a ruler from the city of Kish, and they went to build the outpost tower of Babel right here. You can see Kish is on one river, the Tigris. Babel is on the other river, the Euphrates. So you can see why this city would have an outpost tower. Then what you have is dispute at the tower, so that in this year 130, they go down the river to the city built in 2239 BC. But you'll see there was no ruler till 2207. That'll be covered and explained also. I need to delete this. That's putting down here. The next thing is that the city of Erech and the city of both name their ruler, their new ruler of 2127 BC, by the name of Kieg or Kiang, which is king. This is where the English word comes from that year 2127 BC. You'll also find out that it's why they mistakenly think that Abraham's father Terah was born in 2127 BC instead of 2148 BC. 21-year difference. A 21-year difference that'll be taken up in another video as to why there's 21-year differences all throughout history, all the way down to Nebuchadnezzar, a 21-year difference. When divided, it fell in 2029 BC. They went back to Babylon to build a city around that. And why? Because they were tagging as being just another Babel. Just another Nimrod, just another Babel. And most of these Asians then went to build Mari. And we can prove that by Chinese tradition, and we can also prove it by Mayan American tradition. So we'll get into that too. Okay, you'll see that I've done my little correction here of my map, not having it labeled in 2 places. Okay. You will notice that maps will vary For example, if you were to look at Eric and upstream from each other, you'll see that Larsa is way over here. Pre-flood Larsa and post-flood Larsa. There's two Larsas. It was rebuilt by Noah's children. And yet if you look at this map, you'll see that the water goes all the way up to Eridu. In the pre-flood world, would have been underwater. Here's Eridu. I'll back up. Here's Eridu. No, would not have been underwater. But the point is that the Gulf had lowered itself as the plate tectonics dropped of the oceans so that the water came down and as the land rose. But you get contradictory maps, because here's what I want to show you. Here you have a map, and we got 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 of the pre-flood cities. You'll notice Larsa here is between Uruk and Here's and this too. Notice that this would be underwater because Eridu is here. You have Eridu west of So if the water came up higher, would be underwater for Eridu to be on land. And you have Larsa in between Eric and Back up, and you will see that Larsa is over here. It's not between Eric and Here's here's Eric, and you'll see that Larsa is not between the two. And you'll see that Eridu is on the coast, closer to the water than Come over here, and Eridu is further from the water than and Larsa is between the two. So who is picking which sites for which cities are where? You know, it's not an agreeable thing. We still have Kish and Babylon up here. So here's the dates that I put up on this map. What you have is, you have a 360-day calendar in the pre-flood world. The city of Eridu was 686 AM of Adam, not of the planet, not of the universe, not of the sun. This is 6,000 years of Adam. The atheist or a gnostic doesn't have to say that I'm claiming that the galaxies are all 6,000 years old, or that the Milky Way, one of millions of galaxies, is 6,000 years old, or that the sun is, or that the earth is, or that when I say Adam is 6,000 years old, that's all I'm saying. I don't need a million atheists and a million agnostics to be telling me that I'm saying science and evolution and everything else is only 6,000 years old. I'm only concerned with people. Are people coming back to life? Are they going to be resurrected or not? If they are, this is all about Adam. It doesn't matter whether a monkey crawled out of an egg or not. It's going outside the topic to distract the real issue. So then here with my arrow, Eridu, 686 AM, is 3340 BC. This is when Methuselah was born. And he died when the flood came. Then we have Bad Tabira, 3160 BC. Another name for Bad Tabira, according to the Zondervan Encyclopedia. Well, Zondervan is a publishing. The book is Halley's Bible Handbook. Anyways, it's called Bad Gurguru. It means a city of bronze workers. So this is the city where they began to make bronze, and showing that it was done before the flood, and showing that it was considered scientific technology. And therefore rule was allowed to begin there. They were allowed to have control as of 3160 BC onward. This is historic. So why ignore it? Why call it mythology? Okay, so now we have Larsa, 986 AM. Larsa is 3040 BC. That's when Enoch was killed. That's when he disappeared, vanished. Everybody saw him translated from matter to air. It tells us something about the rulership there. And you'll find that I'll use the word rulership because I recently discovered that kingship is a word that was created in 2127 BC after the flood. Okay? So then we have the city Sippar up here, 2660 BC. Shuruppak is where Noah was born and raised, 2601 BC. BC is not when Shuruppak was built. It's when the ruler began to rule there. Noah was born 2970 BC, which is before that. So I don't know if he was born in Shuruppak or not, but he built the ark there. Okay, so if he was born there, the city existed before rulership began in 2601. But if the city wasn't built until the ruler or Tsar had begun ruling, then Noah was born somewhere else and ended up in Shuruppak, where he built the ark outside. And you can see it's not too far from the water. But the water would have to travel all these miles. I would say this is what? 50 miles? Shuruppak is about 50 miles away from the coast. So there's no way that they saw the water coming other than out from the land around the ark. The flood then came, and we have Cush building the city of Kish after the flood in year 100, when Nimrod was born. He's building it for his family, a house, wife, child. And when Nimrod's 30, over here, Babylon, the Tower of Babel is built. They have their dispute, and Peleg takes half the city of Kish down the river to Ur. And they build the city of Ur in defiance of Babel. Why? Because they are disagreeing as to what it should be built for. Should the tower be built to measure a year or to measure the day? Does the sun circle in the year, or does the sun circle each day? So it's confusion of languages that has occurred actually since Adam and Eve. Adam and Eve is Babel. Eve is saying the crab apple's okay to eat, and Adam is saying, no, it's not. Look at it. Nobody eats it. They still don't. Do you ever see anybody eat a crab apple? Do you see a snake? Do you see a dog, a cat, a bird? The crab apples, they fall off the tree and rot on the ground. There's nothing that ever eats them. Thus, we're talking about confusion starting with Adam and Eve, not Babel. And confusion existed with angels. Otherwise, the angels would be saying, while they're on earth, yes, Noah's right. The water's going to come down. But here Noah was human, and angels themselves, who have been out there in the universe, coming down to earth through the water canopy, they were saying, never happen. Nope, it'll never happen. It's just another nut, this Noah. Don't you think the rest of the world would know? Millions of people. You know, his whole family. Noah had thousands of grandchildren, great-grandchildren, 600 years of children he had. None of them listened. 3 sons are who listened. So now we'll go to the next map. Therefore, we have the pre-flood world and the rulers. And here's where you're going to get some confusion. Coloring matters a whole lot. So what I did is, whereas I used to color longevity in long green lines like this, I find it might be easier to change the color to that. And we'll talk about this chart here. Starting at the top of the chart, right here, it says, these lists were written after 2121 BC when the name Kiang or king was coined, equating past Tsars or Shahs or Shahs, Arabic Shahs, Russian Tsars, with their current kings. Referring to Larsa from 3040 to 2370 BC are Tsars, and rebuilt Larsa after the flood, 2020 to 1762 BC, are kings. So, down here at the bottom, you'll see Adam saw the rule of the first three rulers. I used to say three kings, but since kings, the word did not exist till 2127 BC, I changed it all to rulers. I have to change this to rulers also. It says kings. A lot of charts to draw up and a lot of changes. You're going to find with me that things are popping into my head constantly. I haven't had time to preach for 30 years because everything that I was ready to print out or to disclose in a video, there was something new that I knew. I'm drowning. Just as you're going to find, I'm going to drown you by the time we're through with this course. So, we'll pause there. Okay, we changed kings to rulers here. 970 years of rulers. Methuselah lived 969 years. It's 970 years to the flood. 349,200 days. There are 10 rulers, that's 10 Tsars, but a Tsar is also a decade, 3,600 days. So what we have here is 970 years are 97 Tsars. So I'm going to take you through the king lists, and just as there are 4, 5, 6, 7 different versions of Genesis, because they've all been altered, there are also several versions of the king lists, and you can show which ones were derived from which one. Instead of being a philosopher where everybody gives their opinion and nobody makes any decision, and you say, oh, there's 5 variations, any one of them could be true. No, where did the other 4 variations come from the correct one? That's the proper perspective you want to have in your mind. So, from this, the longest king list you are going to find is 456,000 days, up here in red. That's year 390 of Adam, 1,266 years to the flood. That's 456,000 days to the flood, and that is when Alulim comes down. However, even though he's ruling, meaning he's in the flesh, among earth, among people, when Adam is 390 years old, you will find out that he did not rule until Methuselah was born. And that's why the big issue about Enoch cursing them, telling them that they have no business ruling merely because they are older ones or elders, angels who are millions of years old, being older brothers of human beings. So then, Father Adam is not right because he's fighting with Mother Eve. Is Mother Eve right all the time and tells Adam what to do? Or is Adam right all the time? Or is it the angels? We can come down and we'll tell these stupid people how to be, because obviously God isn't doing so. So, first of all, we have Alulim. Right here, the city of Eridu. Alulim, meaning Allah, a god, not just Allah, but Lulam, as in aluminum, illumination, the angel of light. He is Satan. And it's actually taken me these whole 30 years to realize that there's enough indication to prove he is Satan. I always suspected that he is Satan. The only problem is you have to explain the serpent or the snake in the tree away. And that came along in a YouTube video just this year. So we'll be getting to that later on. And then after Alulim, who rules 8 sars, or 80 years, which is 28,800 days, not years. If people live 900 years, they don't live 28,000 years. That would be 30 times longer. Down here at the bottom, you'll see that I put Allah, which means God, or it means, we say God, but the English word God is actually good, all good, everything good. The Hebrew and Arabic words, Allah, means all power. So it's actually almighty. So Allah is power. Mar is another word, a special word for the firstborn son. Any son, and it's Bar. But if it's the firstborn son of astronomy to work in the temple, it is called Mar. And thus the planet Mars, also the name Marduk, Merodach. With this, we have Alamar. Although other lists will say Allah Gar with a G. That's interesting because they used Gar in the movie Ghostbusters. At the end of the movie, it is Gar who shows up as a woman this time and creates a marshmallow man. Then we have N, Menluana. We also have N, Mengalana. We have Kachuna, Sibziana, or N Sibziana. N, Mendarana, or Emen Darana. Uburatum, and Kaisuthros, which in Greek is Christos, the Christ, the one who crosses over from old world to new world. So therefore, the pagan Christos of Greece was not Jesus. They were not looking for a Jewish Christ. There's a jump over from Greeks looking for Christos and accepting Jesus instead. We're going to get into that, where there's a mistake of thinking that he is Noah. But one of the major things that prove it is in all the 4 lists, 5 or 6 lists, nowhere will the 7th forefather, Enoch, reach the 7th king. How can Sibziana be Enoch if Enoch's already gone? There's 300 years between the 7th forefather, Enoch, and the 7th ruler, who is Sibziana, or En Sibziana, ruling 8 sars, or 80 years. Okay, before I get to the longevity part, what I'm going to do here is mention things that I say on this chart that I drew. I've added over the years more and more. I have this highlighted from Alulim onward as the calendar, because it's in 10 years from Adam, and so it must be the evidence source of why a longer list claims Alulim began ruling back in 390. And what I have is carbon 14 from angel bodies. When an angel makes a body of carbon, he could pull carbon from the air, or he could do it the easy way and turn nitrogen, the air is mostly nitrogen, into carbon 14. But doing so, does that angel know he's going to cause Adam to die at 930? So the problem with longevity is actually get the angels off the earth first. Push them off. No matter how perfect Adam tries to be, he can't, because he can't push an angel off the earth and say, get out of here. So I actually have this. Angel bodies ages all organics, ages Adam for 540 years, from age 390 till his death at 930. It is Enoch that says, leave us and go home. Get out of here. You're not approved by God. You're getting worse. You're doing things that you didn't do 300 years ago. You're getting worse. You're decaying. You're corrupting. You're not an improvement for society. Therefore, what we also find is that, yes, Satan or Lulam did not keep the kingship or rulership to himself. Whatever city was able to prosper or improve society in their eyes, one rose above the other. The Alamar was given the authority by Alulam, but in Bad Gaguru or Bad Tabira, they learned how to dig up the bronze, melt it down. I really don't know how bronze is, what, copper and brass? Anyways, put it together and make tools for humans to use. It is then that Larsa, Kachuna, begins to rule. And here's where we're going to present to you the evidence that Kachuna was the father of the first Nephilim. And that evidence will be presented. So there were Nephilim in the earth for 670 years, 67 SARS. This is what you're going to find mostly published. It's a contradiction that's published by archaeologists, by science. They will tell you that the list of rulers, kings before the flood, is 241,200 years. And they will say this is 10 kings. And it's not. The list of 241,200 is a list of 8 kings. And all the 10 king lists are longer than that. So they're combining two different statements. 10 kings, 241,200. It's false. There is no list, 241,200, that has 10 kings. They all have 8. Okay? But they want to say 10 because they want to claim that it's Adam and the 10 forefathers of Noah. From Adam to Noah is 10. And they want to say, see, it's from the Bible, or the Bible is from it. What else shall we point out on this list? Recently, I added the ages of each one. Adam was 686 when Alulam began to rule. He was 766 when Alamar began to rule. He was 866 when Enmenluana began to rule. And he died before Kachuna took over. Seth was 556 when this rulership began in Eridu. 636 when Alamar took over. 736 when the city Bad Tabira or Bad Gaguru began bronze workers making bronze. So for 120 years, Bad Gaguru was making bronze tools, and Adam and Seth and Enosh and Kenan and Mahalalel and Jared and Enoch and Methuselah and Lamech, all of these were alive while this bronze was being made. As you can see, up and down here. The only one who was not around was Noah of the 10 generations. Off to the side here I have, follow my arrow, SARS or SHARS are decades of 3,600 days, 10 years of 360 days, approximately Julian October 12th to October 12th, which is approximately Gregorian September 22nd equinox to September 22nd equinox. The reason this is so is because that's for 2370 BC. And prior to 2370 BC, you cannot predict what the axis pull, what the angle of the axis of the Earth was, what pull it had, the precession. None of that can be predicted unless you have the data or information prior to 2370 BC. All the things that we have that are referring to I shut off my notifications down here. I don't need them coming up constantly. All these tweets and twits and of people I'm not even concerned about. over here, I was talking about not knowing the axis of the earth prior to the flood. When we have discussions of when was the first lunar calendar, when was the first 365-day calendar, it's all after 2370 BC. It can be proven. Taking mathematics back into the millions of years or back to 3000 BC, just because you go back with the mathematics, isn't so if any event had altered to become what it is now. So now I have here Allah means God. Many of the names are seen with N and An, which means from heaven. N is like entity. An is like Anu, the stars, heaven of stars. They will translate them as God or Lord. So En-Men-Luana of Bad Gagura here will be translated Lord Menluana or God Menluana. Myriads, 10,000 of angels, forced back out of the flesh by drowning or the fear of drowning when the flood came, including the 10 rulers or 10 Tsars. So we have 970 years, 97 Tsars, 349,200 days of 10 rulers, 10 Tsars. Adam saw the rule of the first, back up. How did that happen? Okay, we can go to the next one. You can see all the details here. You can pause it if you can see it. And we'll go on to the next. Here are 4 lists. Now, I used to have them from longest to these 3 lists I found were comprised of this list. And I used to have them in a different order, but I figured that I need to explain it in this way. So with Elulim coming down as the angel of light, Satan, even though that's first, the list itself is actually created by post-flood Larsa down here. Okay? You'll see I have the ruler or Tsar. I have the city. I have the decades. 8 Tsars is 8 decades. The years, 80 years. And the days, 28,800 days. The longest list here, which indicates the calendar. The reason it does that is because it's 1,266 years. The extra 6 years will put it on the decade from Adam. All the other lists are an even 10 years back from the flood. Well, how do you set up 10 years saying, oh, the flood's going to come on one of our 10 years as rulers, as kings? You know, you don't say that. There's no way that they knew the flood was coming and that it would come in an even 600 years of Noah and even 970 years of the kings. So the longest list, 1,266 years, these are decades of Adam. These are decades of Adam. So that when the flood comes in year 1,656, they're not even decades. But there is a Hindu list that'll make them even decades. In fact, I'll mention that now, though I won't show you the chart. What it is that by presuming the 1,656 years before from Adam to flood, by presuming them as Julian, being longer than 360 day, but 365 day, and having a leap day every 4 years, that if those were Julian years, then that would mean that they are 1,680 of 360-day year. There you get even decades. You get Adam, a decade of Tsars from Adam's creation, all the way to the flood being an even decade. And thus they can think that, okay, Adam began the decade, the 3,600 day decade, and the flood came, ending the decade. Therefore, 1,680 years being 168 decades. It's a false conclusion. It concludes that the Earth has not changed its orbit, its spin. It hasn't changed, that an asteroid impact did nothing to it, or there was no asteroid impact. It was just rain that came down upon the Earth. Makes a big difference, because with the water canopy gone, there is easily presumed way too much water needed for a flood, and the baptism is ignored. Baptism caused by impact. So, this, and it also does the same thing it does with the Marduk calendar. We're going to find out that Mars had more than one calendar. By presuming them all the same calendar, you start forcing history into false conclusions and false data that creates the new Genesis and the new Egypt and the new Assyria. So here on the chart, I have explained this longest list down here, 456,000 days, which you will find. Google it up, you'll find. Pre-flood kings, antediluvian kings, 456,000, you will find. You may not find the list, you'll find it stated that they ruled that long. Okay? It was written at rebuilt Larsa. That means it wasn't written from 3040 BC to 2370 BC, those 670 years of Larsa. It was written by the descendants because it lists them as kings and therefore after the year 2127 BC. Pre-flood 670-year Larsa, banned from rebuilding until Noah died. The first dynasty of Larsa is 2020 to 1762 BC. These 260 years are of 360 day, and that's why they're only 258 years, 257 years. Okay? Hammurabi came up and attacked the city in 1763 BC, took away captives 1762 BC, burned it down and destroyed it 1761 BC. That's when Jacob got out of Haran and said he wasn't going to wait for Hammurabi to come and take that city too. In fact, he probably thought it was pretty nice to think that Hammurabi could make Laban, Uncle Laban, a slave the way Uncle Laban had made him a slave, sticking him with 4 wives and accusing him of stealing all the sheep and leaving the way a good Jew or good Christian would. Okay, always accusations, in other words. The next list we have. Here we have written in 290 BC by Berosus, a priest of Babylon, a list claiming that Babylon was built before the flood as the first city. But this is Neo-Babylonian chronology. New Babylon was started up by the Assyrians in 747 BC. And they calculated or reconstructed the flood as 2947 BC. So here you have written in 290 BC, placing the flood in 2947 BC. Obviously, it's not the correct list. And stating Babylon is the first city ever built after Adam. Okay? Then we have the Larsa list. The Larsa list here versus the Nippur list. Here Larsa is claiming that only 8 rulers ruled for 67 Sars, from Enoch's death to the flood. Written in 1840 BC, year 400 of Babel. It had to have been written between 2020 and 1762, the dynasty of Larsa. And the reason it would be 1840 would because it's not only 400 of Babel, but it's 1,200 years of Venus. That's a Venus cycle, 1,200 years from 3040 BC. So that's the most evidence. The first three are retained, meaning these three rulers, Ululim, Alamar, and Menluana, ruling during the 300 years that Methuselah lived until his father Enoch died, vanished. Those three rulers are retained by being shoved 300 years forward, so that Ululim is considered the one who ruled when Enoch vanished. You know, what this is an indication of is that Ululim is the one that struck Enoch for opposing Kachuna. And that's where you get into, well, what would he oppose him for? He'd oppose him for murdering a man, for the woman then complaining she has no children. So what does he do? He gives her a child, a Nephilim son, the first Nephilim ever born. But it would be Ululim who would say, how dare you defy us? We're the elders. You obey the elders. We're the older brothers of mankind. We're from heaven, not you, Enoch. And therefore striking him in the name of God. And that would make Satan, Ululim or Satan, a manslayer. Without the metaphor that, oh, Satan is a voice behind a snake telling Eve, you will not die, and therefore this lie will make Adam and Eve slayed to death, and therefore Satan is a manslayer through the snake, through the serpent. All that metaphor is unnecessary when you see that Satan literally put Enoch to death, and that Enoch was the great-grandpa of Noah. Methuselah was the grandpa of Noah. His father was put to death by Satan, by Ululim. So those three are retained, and it is Kachuna who is eliminated. Let's not mention him. We don't have to say that because Enoch condemned him, that's why Ululim killed him. And by eliminating Kachuna, we then have 5 rulers left. Those 3 plus 5 are 8 rulers. And so a list of 8 rulers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, during 670 years. However, the real list, with 10 kings, 3 rulers before Larsa, leaves only 7 rulers. So Larsa only had 7 rulers over it, not 8. Not only do they have 8 rulers in this new list, written by post-flood Larsa, but the very last name, Ubar-Du-Du, having 51 Sars and 1 Ner, 18,600. The name itself is taken from Uburatum and Zinsudu, Kaisuthros. Here we have Ziusudu, Kaisuthros, Zinsudu. It's merged, Ubar-Du-Du. Ubaratum rule is kept the same, but his name is merged with Zinsudu to be Ubar-Du-Du. So I'm hoping that I clarified this. We don't have much more to say about this chart. We can go on to the next one right here. Larsa ruled by 7 rulers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, not 8, in these 670 years. Next chart. Oh, let's up here. What this indicates in Larsa is that Kachuna is the one Enoch dared to curse for murder, for interspecies breeding, and the first Nephilim son, with Methuselah at 300 by his side. But it was Ululim there in Larsa at coronation that struck Enoch in the name of God, making him vanish in the crowd dematerialized. You're talking antimatter. Antimatter is not atom for atom. It is not antimatter water atom eliminating antimatter water atom. Antimatter, the theory, comes in the form of where positive protons bump into negative protons, negatrons. And where negative electrons are bumped into by positrons. Okay? This would be the same power that they used to materialize themselves. So they could easily dematerialize themselves the same way. And thus they could also dematerialize Enoch. But Enoch was dead when they did that. He was gone. Dissipated into the heaven or atmosphere. It doesn't mean he raised up and lifted into the clouds or went into heaven to be with God. None of that is, those are all going beyond what the Bible says. Of course, you can say, oh, dematerialization, that's going beyond. Obviously, to clarify anything could be tagged by an opposer or enemy as going beyond. I mean, we could just blah, 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 and say, whatever it says, no explanations. So, if we go on to the next chart, here is comparing the cities to where they ruled. The map, you can see how long the Persian Gulf is, pre-flood water, coming all the way up to or Eridu. You saw the two maps where Eridu is on the water in one map, but is on the water in the other map. So which is it? You also see where Larsa is here between Erech and but on the other map, Larsa was over here on the water. People who can't make up their minds. Here you have Eridu. These first two angels, first two gods. Again, I should change this to say rulers, not kings. Eridu is right here. Ruler 1 and ruler 2 for a total of 180 years. 8 SARs, 80 years, plus 10 SARs, 100 years. Okay? The next one is the city Bad Gaguru. That's Bad Tabira right here. Dynasty 3, or ruler 3. And then ruler 4 is in Larsa. That's Kachuna, Enoch city. Alulim dematerializes Enoch for opposing the coronation of Kachuna. Noah is born during this king, father of a Nephilim son. Okay? After Larsa, it goes right back to Bad Dabira, Bad Gurguru, for 5 and 6, which is Enmen-Galana and Dumuzi. Now, Dumuzi is interesting because there is Dumuzi the shepherd before the flood. It means the leader, taking the lead. After the flood, Dumuzi is the name of the planet Mars. Before it's called Mars, it's called Dumuzi. And there is also a ruler that is called Dumuzi the fisherman. So it has to be apparent this is not the planet Mars. This is an angel from heaven. Then we have Insibziana from Lerich. And Lerich is up here. Ruler number 7. Ruler number 8, Enmen-Durana, is in the city of Sippar, all the way up here. Ruler number 9 and 10, Uburitum, Kaisuthros, or the interactive name of the Larsa list, Ubar Dudu. That is Sharupik, where Noah built the ark. Notice they rule only 180 years and 51 years is 232 years at Sharupik. Noah lived 600 years before the flood, so Sharupik was not ruling when, the city of Sharupik was not ruling when Noah was born in 2970 BC. But anyways, what we'll do is, I'm going to show you. See, here's all the different cities. Take a look at that, and I even went one at a time. This one. Whoa. And where is this? Guess I lost it. There's a blank. Third one. Fourth one's. Third, fifth, and sixth is Bad Dabira. The third one, Larsa. Lyric. Sipper. And Sharupik. The city where Noah lived and built the ark north of Enoch City, Larsa. And I should have said that I should have been showing you this whole string of videos while I was stating. I was distracted by the fact that I had kings here instead of rulers, and that sort of sank into my mind as something I got to change. Oh well. Before I did the previous list showing 300 years between the seventh, those 300 years are, here's Enoch's death, and 300 years is Sibziana. And Sibziana cannot be Enoch because Enoch is gone for 300 years. So therefore, Alulam is not Adam and Kaisuthros is not Noah. One of the things to prove that, though, is that when Noah died in 2021 BC on Christmas Day, as Christmas, it became Kaisuthros Day or Christos Day, the day he died. A spirit spoke to the Babylonians, the Babel priests, for 40 days, saying that he was Kaisuthros or Christos. They therefore concluded it was Noah, but it's not Noah because Jesus said no one's gone to heaven yet until the Son of Man, the one who comes down from heaven, returns to heaven, which is Jesus. So therefore, by Jesus being here 40 days after death, he was proving that he is really the first Noah to be there speaking to anybody 40 days after death. And instead of a spirit in seance under drugs in the city of Babel, here it was Jesus in Jerusalem becoming flesh, saying to Thomas, touch me, touch my wounds. It's me, I'm in the flesh. Doing this to prove that back 2,000 years ago, it wasn't Noah, that it was a spirit claiming to be Noah and therefore a liar. And even if the spirit didn't intend to do that, even if the Babylonians or priests were just stupid, assuming you must be Noah, they allowed it. It's like whatever a spirit says in a Ouija board. If it's laughing at Zarsoff that these people are stupid playing with the Ouija board and believes anything he says, that doesn't justify it. You don't lie and bullcrap to people merely because they're so dumb to believe you. You know, if they said, oh, you must be Noah, what the spirit Kaisuthro should have said is, no, I'm not Noah. I'm the one that went to heaven when the flood came and Noah was inside his ark. But there is no repentance, no admission of sins. So anyways, you'll see that in all four lists, the seventh one is always after Enoch. So clarification that we have a lame sacrifice of all these thousands of people throughout history claiming that Kaisuthros is Noah, and then therefore the first one, Alulam, is Adam, and therefore the seventh one is Enoch, and no one ever checking it out, saying how? How can it be? So here, Enoch dies before seventh king rules. I want to get away from the word king because I stress where the word king comes from later on. Alulam giving kingship to Kachuna down here strikes Enoch for objecting, translated publicly in the crowd. So you can study that chart, freeze it, stop the video. Here you see Bad Dabira is the same as, where do I have Bad Gurguru? Bad Gurguru here. Okay, it was Halley's Bible Handbook that told me Bad Guguru means City of Bronze Workers. And that was back in 1984 that I found that handbook. Okay? So 1984 to 2020, how long does it take for other organizations to be giving lame sacrifices? This has been submitted to Watchtower about 5, 6 dozen times in 30 years. You don't see any of it ever mentioned. In fact, when I prayed to Jehovah, the Spirit of Jehovah within me told me, okay, ask the Watchtower for the information, and when they reject you, if they don't have an answer, if they're too dumb, if they can't find an answer, don't want to, if they're too lazy to, I mean, we can go on and on and on and on with the if, Jehovah says, I'll answer it myself. And he did. Very rapidly. As soon as I got their rejection letter, boom, I went flipping through all the books on the kinglists, and all this got put together. So if Jehovah's Spirit isn't there, it isn't Jehovah who's pulled away from them. They're not knocking. Jesus says, knock on the door, you'll get the answer. I've had these answers for 30 years. I find that neither atheist nor Watchtower wants to listen. I find evolutionists nor creationists want to listen. They like being blind. So my point is that there's no need for anyone to leave Jehovah or leave the Bible or leave truth. Okay? Now it may sound like, well, confused then. Aren't you one of those Jehovah's Witnesses? Aren't you Watchtower? No. The Watchtower is like Mother Mary raising Jesus. The Holy One is Jesus, not Mother Mary. The Holy One is anointed, 144,000, not the Watchtower who feeds them. The Watchtower can be spit on just like you spit on Mother Mary, because she's not to be exalted over Jesus. Watchtower is not to be exalted over 144,000, much less the last 7,000. Now, 7,000 comes from Elijah. Elijah is shown the last 7,000. And to prove there's 7,000, for 30 years there's been partakers of communion for the Watchtower between 7 and 8,000. And then all of a sudden all the false ones came in, jump into 10,000, 14,000, 18,000, 24,000, 25,000. Okay? It's a little late to say it's just an invitation, when how long ago has it been proven that there's only 7,000 left? So that if the numbers go up, it's the false ones coming in, which is fine, because the true ones can hide out then. You know? That's what Abraham was doing in Canaan. He was hiding out. He was hiding out from the city of Ur. The city of Ur was supposed to be the city of God. Babel can't do it right. Babylon can't do it right. So we will build the city. We will build Ur. And we will make appointments of elders, appointments of rulers, appointments of patriarchs. We will appoint who's skilled at what. We will show that God approves only if you are appointed. But instead, the word went out. It's just like Nimrod. Mighty hunter, opposition, taking up challenges. However you want to interpret it doesn't matter, because it's saying Ur is just like Babel, that the kings of Ur are just like Nimrod. And you will find it wasn't Nimrod who married his mother, it was Amarpal, Amarsin, the son of Shulgi, who married his mother. You will find that it wasn't Hammurabi, that it wasn't Nimrod that came and destroyed the city of Mari, it was Hammurabi who did, just like Nimrod. It wasn't Amizaduga that released all the Asians to disperse and flee from Babylon. It wasn't Nimrod, it was Amizaduga. You're talking different years. Hammurabi coming after Mari, 1762 BC. Amizaduga freeing the Asians, 1625 BC. All of them are before Moses, they all get tagged as that must be Nimrod or just like Nimrod. So if we show these rulers separately, we have the list here of Adam through Noah and Shem, and we have the rulers. Sibziana right here ruling long after Enoch's death. Alulam dematerialized Enoch with antimatter for opposing the kingship of Kachuna. Carbon 14, I threw that on here. Ice Age, 2370 to 2320. The 50-year meltdown of an ice cap that built up a mile high during the 150-day flood. That ice cap fills the Great Lakes with fresh water. It dates from 20,000 to 10,000 because it's got 10 times to 12 times less carbon-14. Jericho dates as 7,000 BC, but it's only 2237. Peleg dates as 2030. His death is correct. The tombs of Ur. Noah will date as 22,020 BC. Because he's from before the flood, his body still has the same very minute amount of carbon-14. Most of what you eat, if you're full grown, most of what you eat, you burn it. It comes right back out your mouth breathing carbon dioxide. So that carbon-14 is not put in your body. It's put in your body while you grow up. From a cell to a fetus to a newborn to a toddler to a teenager. You're building all that carbon-14 up in your body so that after the age of 30, if you grew to be 30 before the flood, you're going to be like Noah. You still live 950, even though 350 years of eating after the flood. But notice Shem, only 100 years of eating before the flood. What happens to him? He gets 300 years cut off, 350. So then we have, that's why we're going to have Nimrod. If you could find Nimrod's body, it's going to date around 7,700 BC when he died in 1770. He has the carbon-14 of less carbon-14 than Peleg. That's why he lives double the life that Peleg does. We have Eber, the fourth generation. We have Kf, the one who built the Great Pyramid. He's fourth dynasty, fourth generation. And Nimrod are all people buried during the 12th dynasty, but are dating as if they're 7,000 BC or 3,000 BC. Thus, all the people who died before the flood, you're going to add 20,000 years to it right here. All these people, 20,000 years, they're going to look 20,000 years older than what they really were when they died. If Enosh died in 2886 BC, it's going to look like 22,886 BC. Carbon-14. That's another video. I'll show you the atomic structure and what I learned. I used to think that carbon-14 turned into carbon-12. It doesn't. It turns back into nitrogen-14. And with that phone call, that ends that slideshow, that question about cities before the flood. I actually wanted to present after the flood, but because I want to show you what Haran did with Nimrod. And with that in mind, that's a long enough video because I don't want long videos. I want to pose questions and answer them. And if I can get briefer yet, that'll be great. I might even re-record this video later on and delete it. So you better download it and copy it. Do a search on copy URL and find video. I am not putting any copyright on this. This is my declaration that God gives me free. I receive free. I give free. Nobody ever has donated to me. I'm bankrupt. I'm in debt. I owe the IRS 10 years. Um, can't afford to take it out of the pension, but now I'm making payments, but it's still okay. Don't need to go there. It's not a sob story. I'm just saying that all the other orgs in the world are collecting vast amounts of money when I can give you truth for free. And if you can find this truth anywhere else that I've just given you, please send me an email. Call me up. Prove to me someone else has had this the past 30 years like I have, and I've been trying to get it out to all of you. If not, my main purpose is the 144,000, the last 7,000 must get to New York to take their IBSA British license away from the Watchtower. It would be the same as saying that Jesus has to make sure that the Savior is him, not Mary. Mary ain't going to save nobody. Jesus is. It isn't Mary who appeared for 40 days. Let's see. Jesus died. He was resurrected. He appeared to Mary and said, Mary, for 40 days, you got to tell everybody I'm alive. That buzz ain't happening. Okay? That's the same. The Watchtower ain't going to save nobody. It is the 144,000 who will save them. And they must all come to Jehovah before Armageddon, or everything is destroyed by Armageddon, and Satan gets proven freed. He gets to prove his point that people are not self-sacrificing. I'm not self-sacrificing. I'm Jonah. Give me a fish. I'll go to sleep in the belly and die because I don't want to be thrown up. So I openly admit that, you know. Jesus said you can curse Jehovah, curse Jesus, and as long as you don't curse the spirit that drives you to carry out God's will, that you'll continue to live. Unfortunately, I am really driven by this spirit. I like to know things. I like to know truth. I value truth. There's some guy that went from Ireland to the governing body because he valued truth. This is for him. I dedicate this to him to come back to Jehovah. You don't have to come back to Watchtower. Come back to Jehovah because the 144,000 are ready to stand up. The bride of Jesus is a queen sitting on a throne next to Jesus, and she cannot stand up because her feet are down here on earth. So please, if it has to be, if Watchtower can't strip itself down and sell everything to get these people to New York, whether it be $1 million visa for someone in Iran, if they can't do that, I'm telling you that there's somebody out there with a bottle of perfume that will pour it on the feet of the Christ, on the feet of the Queen of Heaven, the bride of Jesus. That perfume, please donate, because I'll tell you what, I don't know if I have a Patreon account. I don't know if it's set up yet. But if you donate, I swear by the law to throw me into prison, kill me, whatever, not one penny will be touched except to bring those saints to New York. That's how much I can prove to you if you keep watching the channel and sending me the questions that Jehovah will answer for you. I haven't fed at the proper time because I was told I'm not the one appointed to do the feeding. But Jesus said if he comes and finds the slave being beaten, all the slaves, the master slave beating all the other slaves, because they think appointing to feed means appointed to rule, then what happens is that somewhere along the line, the money box isn't being used to bury Jesus. The money box ain't being used to prepare his feet. Instead, someone else has to come along, and a woman comes along, of all people. Expensive perfume, dumps it on his feet, and Judas is saying, this is a Messiah? This money is getting wasted on your feet? But you got to remember, Jesus washed all of their feet. He washed their feet. Why can't his feet be washed? Okay? And that's the same with the anointed. There's more than just 8 anointed. There's 7,000. And like Mordecai told Esther, you know, you have a position to do something, to go to the king. If you can't do it, our God will save his children, the Jews, the people, his people, whoever he has picked to go through Armageddon. Our God will save those people another way. And you, the Christ, the bride of Jesus, the woman, the queen of heaven, you will die in your household. Now wait, Jehovah can't destroy the queen of heaven. He's already brought most of them there up to heaven. If there's 7,000 left, that's 137,000 in heaven. So the problem isn't them. The problem is on earth. If there's 7,000 on earth, what's preventing the 7,000 from coming? It's someone who thinks that they rule over them instead of just feed them. Okay? In that way, the bride does not have to be destroyed. Of those 7,000, the ones who are trying to rule them, they can be destroyed just like Esther can be destroyed. Because stop and think about this. Were all the Jews destroyed that day because they're just a great crowd? And Esther, the queen, she lived? The Jews only live if they hang on to the skirt of Esther. Esther is the one being saved for Jesus, and therefore all those who survive on the evil day of Haman, the bad man on the right hand of the king, when Haman cast the lots and a day of Jehovah came out of casting the lot, and they knew the day and hour of that casted lot, and they put up the signs and the posters, and they said, this is the day and hour. What about that great crowd of Jews that were allowed to fight back? What about that Armageddon? Why couldn't they all just be killed? And Queen Esther, she can have baby Jesus. She can have the descent that goes down to Joseph and Mary and gives birth. I don't think Esther was of the line of Judah. Okay? But the point being, therefore, that Esther is two-part. She can be like Vashti and a rebel, or she can be the one that comes to the king, comes to Jesus. And of those 7,000, all 8 of the ones who think that they're Noah's Ark, and that all the 8 million animals, barbaric animals, are saved only by hanging onto their skirt, Esther needs to take another look. Because the Esther is already in heaven, and is already 7,000 who are not in New York yet. So the ones who can be lost are the 8 who need to think about this video. And I realize that my threatening words right here are going to create a Judas. They're going to create a Peter who says, Lord, you don't need to do this. They're going to create a Judas that says, this man is running ahead, just like John the Baptizer did when he should start following Jesus. Should John the Baptizer start following Jesus? Or should he lead away and show that the evil ones are going to put you to death? John was put to death before Jesus was, because that's what evil ones do. That's what rebels do. They think they do for God, and that society is in control by them because they see God, not you. Well, come to Jehovah, come to truth. If you have a question, send it to me. But I'll tell you what, I'm going to hit a lot of questions that have already existed for 30 to 40 years. And as much as I wanted to go seek those, and I went into Watchtower material to find the answers, I'll tell you, I found some parts of the answers, but then there's always more in all literature of the world that will show you the truth. And that doesn't oppose Watchtower, never did. The opposing has always been, oh, that's for us to declare, not you. Okay, well, now it's late. Many Tekel Parson. Belshazzar, Nabonidus, you have fallen short. You're too late. You're unprepared. The presentation is here. Where are you? And with that note, we need to close. Because I ramble just like my mom. She says she doesn't.